I'm supposed to be a professional. All right, here we go. Welcome into the Bite Meat Podcast, brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop and TexasStarGrillShop.com. We've been really excited about this podcast from the very start with some fantastic pit masters and experts in the field. We're going to do it to you, bring it to you every week. We always talk about every level of pit master. Every single level of pit master is what we want to help here, from novices to good, strong backyard pit masters to the greatest of the great. And that's where we're going to start right here. And we're going to bring in Grant Pinkerton. Grant Pinkerton, you know the name well. Obviously, already at his young age, I think I can still call him young. At least for me, he's still young. At his young age, one of the great pit masters in America. And Grant, I wanted to get you in, and I always talk about every level of pit master and how you can learn every step of the way, and you can learn from the greats like yourself. But the reality is, you have been every level of pit master. I mean, you were doing things that backyard guys started out, and then people like myself that are maybe a little more advanced, but not to your level, that do things. So I kind of wanted to start there. Like, I know you've told your story in the past about, sleeping on your mom's couch and all that other, your parents' couch and all that other stuff. And obviously, you got your college educated, and you've got a degree similar to mine. Actually, mine was in journalism. I believe yours was in writing or literature or something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you have been every level of pit master. Let's talk not so much about how you rose, but what you learned, especially at the start, and when you committed to this. What were some of the things that our novices can learn and then maybe develop along the way that really kind of opened your eyes?
One thing that I've came really apparent to me from the very beginning is a lot of barbecue is about feel and trust and gut. I a while back, I kind of started adopting the philosophy of, let it roll. So many guys at every level, they almost get too hyper involved in the cook, and end up messing it up somewhere along the way. My wife and I, we were messing around at the house just not 3 weeks ago, and we said, hey, let's try to cook a horrible brisket, and let's try to recreate all the things that people kind of stumble on the way. And so I cook at my house. I cook on a lot of drum smokers, and so I took I actually took a brisket that I bought from Texas Star Grill Shop because it looked really good in there, and I took it. So I was starting off with a good piece of meat. I'll give it that. And I knocked it down in like a really basic trim, something that like a backyard guy could probably accomplish. It didn't look like a bullet, like the ones we're putting in our smokers here. And I cranked my drum to 400 degrees. I put it fat side down. I put no baffle, no water pan. And I said, man, I'm just going to set it. I'm going to let it roll. And I came out, it's like, 285 for a while. And then it was like 425. And, I was just letting it go, and I said, I'll just adjust it. I'm only going to allow myself to come out here every 45 minutes and play with the temperature. So it was kind of going up and down. And I wrapped it at like 170. And, I see a lot of guys online like dump some tallow into the wrap. And so I'm like, screw it. We're going to dump tallow into the wrap. And I wrapped it up. I try to do everything that, like people see on YouTube, Yeah. And I pulled it off, and I didn't really let it rest, but in the oven for like an hour. I really did everything wrong. And we sliced it, and it came out amazing. And I attribute that to, one, it was a good hunk of meat, but two, I didn't mess with it. I didn't have probes all over the place. I wasn't micromanaging my fire. I wasn't freaking out. Generally barbecue's pretty forgiving, but you've got to let it forgive you,
Yeah, you have no idea how much I love that story, because it speaks the language of the everyman. I'm presuming it was mostly hot and fast. You could probably cook quicker
100%,
than
man.
Yeah.
So we cooked it in 5 hours. I put the brisket on at noon.
Good gracious. Now that's a new twist to learn something. I'm going to try to ruin a brisket, and then it turns out delicious. So what did you learn there?
Well, I learned that keep it simple, stupid. You know, the old KISS philosophy. You
Yeah.
know, at the end of the day, it was a good piece of meat. It was a shit ton of salt and pepper. And man, I wrapped it up at 165 and let it go to 208. You know
Did you
what?
wrap it in foil? Did you go the whole 9 yards?
I put it in paper.
Okay.
But that's all I had. That's all I
Yeah.
had sitting around at the house. My foil roll was out. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times when I'm cooking on a drum, I will pan it, you know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do like a backyard style, like I see a lot of people go on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. And man, I think the thing was like, just let it ride, dude. The more we mess with the meat, open the pit, you know, probe it, prod it, wrap it, twist it, add this, add that. Man, I
Yeah.
feel like it just ends up messing it up.
Boy, there's a real lesson there. And I know I just mentioned that, but like most of us do start like me in Brackenridge Park in San Antonio every Easter, and every time I could cook with my dad. I cooked with my dad from the time I was 4 years old. Drum pit, just a drum pit, and I never remember having a bad brisket. I honestly don't. So there's something to be learned from that. But let's transition now, because one of the things I wanted to talk about in this podcast is you get pretty good. Let's say my level. Pretty dang good. I'm confident in just about anything that I can put on my pit or my pellet grill. And then you start thinking, well, maybe I could do a competition. Man, I mean, I've done a couple just as the second, and I've learned a lot. But there are a lot of people out there that have that thought. So and so I mentioned to you. So you want to be a competitive pitmaster. Just take us through. I was going to say the days, but it's really the week or more than 1 week of being a pit master. And you've obviously done it at the highest level. Just give us a glimpse of what it's really like and what people would have to commit to.
Yeah. So, I'm definitely going to give away some of my secrets here, but that's all right. I don't mind. I always say you still got to cook it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, we would get back on a Saturday night or a Sunday, get everything cleaned up, pack the trailer back in, dump it, flush it, clean it. Uh, Man, Monday morning I wake up, I'm going into my deep freeze and I'm picking out which racks of ribs I'm gonna thaw for the week, which brisket I want to cook. A lot of that depends on where we're going, how big a cook off it is. Man, I'm not gonna bring out a 25-pound Snake River Farms Gold for a 25 team cook off in Snook.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
that's gonna be that's a prime brisket cook off. Um, but taking it out, thawing it, taking an inventory of what spices I need in my trailer, going back over probably Tuesdays, restocking the trailer, maybe loading my clothes for the next weekend. Wednesday, I usually get my chicken and wings and pork butts in. I'll go pick through all those and find the ones that I need.
Mm-hmm.
Thursday is and Wednesday night I make all my injections and like pan sauces and my finishing sauces. So that's like a couple hours right there. Get it all bottled up and
Yeah.
screw topped and jarred. Put it in the fridge. Let it kind of steep for a couple days. Thursday is trim day. We'll trim everything down. I put them in Tupperware containers and line them up. Usually it's like 3 money muscles. I'm pretty ballsy, dude. I'll just roll with 2 half chickens, 14 wings. I knock it down to about a 6.5 pound brisket. Really,
Mm-hmm.
just the center of it. That's all I need to cook. And then a point meat for my burn ends, and 2 racks of ribs. I know a lot of guys cook 3, but man, I like to live dangerous.
Well, and you got it down to a
So
science.
right, we'll go in there, and that's part of my philosophy too. Is like I see a lot of guys trying to cook a lot of meat, but at the same time, man, now you're juggling. You're juggling more things, so
Mm-hmm.
you got more stuff to go wrong, more stuff to go sideways. I always feel like the more stuff we can cut out, the better cooks we can be. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just focus on what you need to focus on. If you only need 6 slices of brisket, just focus on 6 slices of brisket. You got
Yeah.
guys out there cooking 3 briskets for 6 slices. Man, all 3 are gonna get less attention than if you just had one small one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Friday I go pick up the trailer from the restaurant, bring it to the house, load it up. Man, then I'm on the road and then get to a contest maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll start injecting some stuff, get the pits moved out onto the porch, some additional trimming, brining, those kind of things. Kind of get my trailer set for how I want everything to be the next morning. Cook's meeting, man, go out to dinner with some people, come back. Some stuff that I need to inject later at night, like, that doesn't need 12 hours to sit. I'll knock those out when I get home, and then I'll go to bed. And then, I'll take a shower because I'm usually got injection all over me. But then I'll go to sleep, and then I wake up around. And this isn't going to sound bad to most people, but about 5:30, 5:45, go outside, light my pits. And then I cook everything hot and fast. So my brisket is on by 6:30. Man, that thing's done by 11:30, maybe 12. My ribs are 2 hours. Ribs usually go on around 7:30 in the morning, done by 9:30 in the Cambro. I like to let them rest for a couple hours, and then I'll put them back on the pit. Pork butts, I put those on around 7. Chicken goes on around, let's see, they're in by noon, so 10 a.m. The half bird's got to go on. And then I'm kind of juggling wings and birds at the same time. And then everything between like 8:30 and 11 is just like beautiful chaos. You're like checking this, jumping to that, glazing this, popping that in the Canberra, moving this to another pit. Then you turn your chicken in, and then you've got an hour window in CBA for every turn in. And man, as soon as the chicken goes in, we're working on finishing our ribs. It's like a 40-minute process in boxing, and then that's in, and then all right, we're on to pork. Pull the money muscles and shoulder out, and we start finishing process on the pork. We put that in the box, send it in. The brisket's done. Last thing, pull out the brisket, do the finishing on the brisket, and then send it in. And then, man, we shower and go to awards, and then try to do it all.
Get the hardware. And I should have mentioned this already. I believe, you tell me, but Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, I think a couple or more finals, and maybe some. Did you get a first, or you? I know you placed it there.
It's fourth rib there, so finalists in rib, chicken, and man, won the dessert category there this year too. So got that world championship. We got 2 first place, our world champion beef at Memphis in May. We're the only team. I'm the only guy from Texas to ever walk the stage in whole hog.
I remember that, and I was going to ask you about that. That is big time. I mean, that is something they take a lot of pride in, and to do that, I know that has to be maybe one of, if not the highlight of your competitive career.
Oh yeah, dude, that was big time. Just taking a state that's not known for doing that, and then me going and I spent a lot of time I have some friends from Mississippi that I've spent, and they've mentored me in that kind of hog department. I mean, it's a whole nother world, and it's not like the restaurant pig, competition hog. And when we open our new restaurant at 59 Diner, man, we're going to serve that once a week, and it'll it just blow your friggin' socks off. It's just the most incredible pork you've ever eaten in your life. It's succulent, it's rich, salty. I mean, it's so hammy and so pork forward. It's just phenomenal. But learning how to do it, learning how to box a hog, learning how to present, it's a whole dog and pony show with on-site presentations and stuff like that. And I just felt like, man, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? And it's kind of like going whole hog against the top 30 hog teams in the country. Man, it's like playing in the SEC. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be the best, you need to play with the best. And so I made it a mission a few years ago, like, man, I'm not going to stop doing that contest until I win that. And then I'll change categories to shoulder. I'm coming for the hog.
Point. Just to prove a point. One thing I'm picking up on here, and I think I'm thinking for our listeners here are probably thinking the same thing, is you cook a lot of stuff pretty dang fast, or at least faster than most. And why is that? And clearly it works,
Yeah, well, my wife comes to a lot of this stuff with me, and we made I told her, we did the overnight thing for a long time. And obviously at the restaurant, man, we're not like super slow and low, but we're not cooking at 300 degrees, maybe 250 at the upper end, 275, something like that. But if you're going to do that recreationally, man, it's no fun to stay up all night. If you've got to like actually do that and perform and you want to be serious about it, it's so much work to stay up all night and then do the contest the next day and then pack your stuff and drive home. It's kind of borderline dangerous. You know, you're like
Yeah.
pulling a trailer home with no sleep. And I just told her, I was like, we're going to figure out cooking hot and fast. Otherwise, we're going to stop doing this because
Yeah.
it's impossible.
Mhm.
And, you know, you start talking to guys and they, you know, a lot of guys do it. Then you start getting the drums. Like we cook on the drums for doing it that way. You can do it in an offset, no problem. I know a lot of guys that cook on offset pits hot and fast, but you know,
Mhm.
doing it on the drums is like the ultimate convection cooker for barbecue, and things just finish fast, man. I know it says 300, but I know just from like cooking chicken on my drum, I will split the skin if the needle's pointing at 300. I know that
Yeah.
skin's gonna split, and
Yeah.
that to me implies that the internal temperature really is probably like 375.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, like traditionally, you know, places like Kreitz's Market and Smitty's and those old school joints, dude, those pits are 400-500 degrees,
Hmm.
and a
Yeah,
lot of
you go
people
to some
don't
of these
know that.
places
They
in
think
Lula, some of these places in Central Texas, and they go hot.
they're hot and fast. Yep.
Yeah.
I know I've heard before that the guys at Kreitz start their briskets at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And shit, man,
Hmm.
they open at like 10 a.m. or 9,
Yeah.
you know? Dude, they're blowing and going.
Yeah. Well, this ties in with another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is, you know, how you got into this and some of the things that maybe, you know, you learned because you didn't know any better, you know, and you
Right.
learn as you go. I think a lot of people watch YouTube videos, they see the TV shows, and I'm an addict. I'm not going to lie. I watch all the Barbecue Pitmaster and all that, but they think
Oh, yeah.
like a competitive, you know, or professionally trained, you know, James Beard award winning, you know, pitmaster or whatever chef, when it doesn't have to be that complicated. And I'm sensing that's the kind of the theme that you're trying to impress here. You know, keep it simple, man.
Hmm. Yeah. You know, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in competition barbecue, and it's really, you know, we keep it really simple at the restaurant too. And that I feel like that's been a big key to our success. Is like, I always had the philosophy that, uh, you know, what somebody asked me a long time ago. They said, "Hey, do you think that the barbecue, you know, people are going to want to stop eating barbecue around here? Do you think it's fad?" I said, "Man, do they eat fried chicken in Georgia still?" And he said,
Yeah.
"Yeah." I'm like, "People are never going to stop eating barbecue here." I
Hmm.
said, "But I think barbecue is a very defined segment." I said, "I think there's a lot of things that people are cooking and broadly barbecue, and I think those will come and go, you know."
Hmm.
I said, "But at the end of the day, man, people wake up in the morning and they crave barbecue. They're craving brisket, ribs, and sausage, and
Yeah.
maybe a potato salad or beans. That to me is what when people wake up in the morning. Because I say people don't drive by a barbecue place and like, I think I'm gonna eat barbecue today. They wake
Yeah.
up in the morning saying, I'm going to eat barbecue, and then
Hmm.
they go to the place that they want the brisket, ribs, and sausage. I think the other ones kind of fall into, you know, like the fusion stuff kind of falls into a separate category. But you can adopt that philosophy into competition too. Like we're trying to cook food that is cooked perfect, is delicious, but I'm not trying to blow anybody's mind. What I'm trying to
Hmm.
do is cook the best average. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want it too salty. I don't want it too smoky. I don't want that box to go in front of anybody
Hmm.
and them say, "Oh, that's too whatever."
Yeah.
Right? So that's the needle that you thread. You don't want to offend anybody's palate. If you don't offend anybody's palate, then you're gonna kick a lot of ass.
Well, what does that say in terms of what you put on? Let's say brisket, but you can translate that to ribs or chicken or whatever. In terms of salt and pepper
Mhm.
versus every imaginable rub that is out there is now out there. Um, is there a line there? Is it a mood for you in terms of what you're rubbing the briskets and such with?
I you run the exact same recipes every week.
Hmm.
And my brisket, I mean, I'm happy to tell it. My brisket is literally my everything rub, which is like just a basic, really good all purpose.
Hmm.
It's my Grand Champion beef rub, and then it's my salt and pepper, and I coat it with salt and pepper like I coat the briskets at the restaurant. And other comp guys, like, they don't do that, but my comp brisket has a thick bark on it.
Yeah.
And that's it, it's injected, but I just inject it with something that is mostly beef amplifier,
Yeah.
It's not like I'm putting Worcester sauce into the brisket, or, there's guys that, garlic and these flavors. No, I want it to be, I kind of want everybody to taste it and be like, man, this tastes like what I cook in my backyard, but just like way better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because they can relate to it, right? It's approachable.
Yeah, it's very, very, very approachable is the right word. Now, let me ask you this: when you're talking to our listeners, and everything you said, they can do. I mean, it's right there in front of them. They can get your rub. They can get Texas Star Grill Shop and whatever. When you, what are some common? Put it this way: what are some common overthinking things that the average pitmaster does, where you may want to tell them, why don't you do this instead? It'll be simpler, it'll be better, and it'll taste like your dad's brisket or whatever. Do they overthink it?
I have several things. I'm a no binder guy. I like to take my meat out. It's got plenty of natural juice. If you need any more, man, just put a little salt on it and pull as much moisture out, and then I just put my seasoning straight on the meat.
Yeah.
That's just an extra messy step. And I tell people this all the time. I said, look, if we're cooking 85 briskets a day at the restaurant, do you have any idea how much mustard that is? Dude, that's gallons of mustard, yellow mustard a day. And like, I'm just not that big on French's, so we're not going to do that. But it's never been a problem,
Yeah.
And, another thing that I see people mess up on is, man, they try to get these like really fancy knives to cut, and they're really not the best tool. Just a simple like the meat, the roast cutting knife from like Dexter, it's like an $18 knife. That's pretty good. And man, I'll use an electric knife too. I got one sitting at my house. Why? It's easy. But nothing's worse than seeing somebody make a pretty good brisket and then putting it on their block and then whipping out this like beautiful knife that's dull as hell and just shredding the crap out of the brisket. It's like, dude, you fumbled on the goal line.
Yeah, just use a serrated knife.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all you got to do.
It could be so much easier. And then I think another thing is people need to cook with more charcoal. I have like a pits and spits backyard smoker at my bay house, and man, I'll just take a split of wood and I'll set it to the side, and then I'll just leave a lump of like Royal Oak supersized or a large long burning charcoal in the center, and I'll keep my heat with the charcoal. And I'll offset, I'll just add a little wood for some smoke flavor. So many guys on these offsets, I see them trying to like, cook with drumsticks pretty much, and keep the fire going, and they're wondering why their fire's going all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just get some briquettes, dude, and build a little mound of hot briquettes and just keep that stoked every 45 minutes to an hour. And your temperature is going to run so flat and so straight. And the flavor will be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to get into a couple of things that I know you've talked about a million times, but forgive me because our listeners I know are going to be interested. You obviously, as I mentioned at the start, you started truly, from the very bottom and decided to get into this. Was it inevitable for you? I mean, was it just like, I went to UT, I got my degree, I could do this or that, but I have to do this. I mean, that's a big risk, man. I mean, I know there was probably a point or two, maybe not, but where your parents said, hey, you applied for any jobs today? Something like that.
Yeah. Well, like I was, I'd always had passion for cooking and stuff like that. And I went away, and full disclosure, when I got out of college, man, I got into recovery, and
we'll get into that
story. And I'm not shy about it, but man, really cooking barbecue on the weekends was something that I did to occupy my time, when I was in kind of like my early recovery and stuff like that. And it was a healthy habit, right? And I had a job at a gym, and I was getting my feet back under me, and I was taking the food up there to the gym and giving it away. And then all of a sudden, like, some of the trainers were like, hey man, I'll pay you $100 for that leftover brisket. if you don't just give it to that guy. And I'm like, all right. So, then I'm like making more money selling some food up at work than I was actually at my job. And man, the guy who runs that gym's a family friend of ours, and he was like, he sat me down one day and was like, man, his name's Cedric Johnson, and I owe a lot to that guy. And he sat me down and he said, Grant, you have a real passion for this, and you have a real talent. This barbecue is amazing. And he said, you're 24 years old, you live at your parents' house, you don't have a girlfriend, you got no debt right now. He's an entrepreneur himself. He said, now it's time to be an entrepreneur. And I said, I don't know if I'm, I was scared, man, like that's a big step. And so he starts cutting my hours, and he's like, man, bring me some barbecue. I'm going to bring some guys in here. They're going to eat the barbecue in front of you, and I'm not going to tell them where I got it. So he called some of his friends, and man, they were guys that they knew some barbecue, man. They're eating on it. Hey, said, where'd you get this? Oh, I'm not going to tell you, blah 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 blah. But they get to the end, they're all raving about it. He's like, man, Grant cooked that. Man, one of the guys turned to me and says, man, I know you got some brother in you. And I knew, like, wow, okay, I must actually have some, there must actually be something to this, dude. I must actually cook some pretty good barbecue to have these guys that are really outside of my sphere of influence, like what I do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I went away, and that week I bought a trailer. And he told me that I could come back and use his parking lot and have pop-ups there. And so I'm just one of these. I mean, I was at a place where I've been at the lowest low, so I had never had anything to lose, man. It was all opportunity for me at that point in my life. And I had my first pop-up and that week, which is an insane idea. I'm like, I'm going to create a whole menu and items and cook all this food and sell it, and it's going to be fine and it's going to work out. And man, it did. And I'm like, standing there, I remember I had a very clear memory that I had like about $1,500 in my hands, which I had to give to my parents because I wasn't allowed to have more than $20 in my wallet. And I just remember thinking, I can do something that I love, and I can make money doing it. And even if I'm just going to keep doing this and going through the next door that opens until it falls on its face. And because if I don't care if I fail, then what's the worst that happens? It's just an ego thing, right? And so I just ran with it, and it turned into this. And I'm still kind of in that same kind of space where if the worst thing that happens is if it fails, worse things could happen, Well,
it ain't going to fail. Give us an update. Give us an update of all the restaurants and all the endeavors you have going on, because I think people need to hear that to really appreciate, starting in that trailer.
Yeah. So, we started in the trailer. 2 years in, we opened the first store in the Heights, 2016.
Right by my house.
2017, we I was in the Forbes list 30 under 30 for the most influential people in the food and drink magazine. That was after Hurricane Harvey. And man, I had some people from Forbes here, and I was kind of talking to them about my business philosophy on barbecue. And I think about it a lot different than a lot of people do. I'm not from the restaurant industry. My parents aren't in the industry. I never worked in the industry before I opened a restaurant. And I really talked to people in the business world about how they run their businesses. And I looked at tech companies, and I looked at all these people that operated businesses in another realm. And I adopted a lot of their philosophies into the restaurant business. And my whole first staff at the restaurant said, well, this isn't the way we do stuff in the industry. And my response to them was, I don't care. This is how we do it here. And, I always thought it was funny because they came from places that had closed. And I'm like, dude, why would we do it that way? So that's how I ended up kind of in there. We went to the Forbes Best Young Chef in America competition and won it that year. Then we made the Texas Monthly list. That was 2017 Texas Monthly list. 2018 was Forbes. That's right. And then because it was after Hurricane Harvey. And then started talking to some people in San Antonio and opened a large store in San Antonio in 2021. And now am about to open a third store in Houston on the kind of, I guess, Upper Kirby, Houston, right by Texas Star Grill Shop, location over there where 59 Diner was. And man, I believe it or not, I got more irons on fire than that. And then, I really got back into the competition stuff about 3 years ago. About 4 years ago, I've won 2 world championships and 2 world championship finalists. I guess 3 with the dessert. A whole bunch of, GCs, RGCs, stuff like that. But I really got back into it because my job kind of turned more administrative. I have 90 employees now. Man, a lot of my business is not in the pit room. It doesn't have anything to do with cooking. It has to do with marketing and running a business and looking at new opportunities and managing employees. And I mean, dude, there's a lot of, getting people's benefits all taken care of. I mean, just administrative stuff. And the restaurant industry is a grind and it's very hard. And competition barbecue allowed me to be around people who wanted to do barbecue in their free time because they loved it. And that was very refreshing and liberating for me and reinvigorating to be around a group of people that they were all happy for each other. Like, that was a cool part about comp barbecue was, man, if you stand up and get a call and everybody's like, hell yeah, Grant, way to go. And then the next guy who technically beats you gets it. He's a friend of yours. And you're like, hell yeah, Bill, that's awesome, man. High five, way to go. Everybody's just happy for each other. I'm like, dude, this is what it's all about,
It's awesome.
And so that got me like, yeah, it really is. Like, it's a really special thing. And that like rekindled my love with barbecue again. And I've just been so much more engaged at the restaurant the last 2 years after really diving in and doing that. And obviously, like, I'm like everybody else, I have a lot of other hobbies too. And I'm never going to point chase for 52 weeks a year, but the spring and early summer, like, man, that's my time to compete. That's when the guys on the trail will see me. And, man, there's not a ton going on. It's barbecue season, man. So that's the season of my life. And,
that trailer should be in the Smithsonian eventually. Do you still have it?
Yeah.
Your first?
It's bad. Yeah, it's real cool.
That's
no, actually,
cool.
I got a story on that one. That one I sold to a guy, man. It's a story, and I'll leave his name out of it, even though I probably shouldn't. But
if he's a friend, you got to mention his name.
I took all my money that I made, dude. He owns another barbecue joint somewhere, and
okay.
Man, I had no money. I had no money at all. My wife and I lived above this. We're fixing. She wasn't my wife. She was my girlfriend. I mean, I had nothing, dude, and we needed money to put appliances in the apartment above the restaurant, and opened yet, and I had no washer and dryer, and I had no refrigerator, and I really didn't want to sell that trailer, and I needed to sell it for like $4,000 to buy all the appliances that I needed. Cause I mean, dude, I literally had zero money in my bank account.
That's crazy.
And, man, there was a guy in town here, and he went over and, I begrudgingly listed my trailer for sale on Facebook, and I needed it cash.
Yeah.
And he was interested in buying it, and he bought it from me. And we went over there to sell it. I kind of told him he had a job in oil and gas at the time. And man, he drove a nice new truck, all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, dude, yeah, it's like $4,000, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, I brought 3,500, take it or leave it. And I'm like,
Yeah, you there? You there? Yeah.
sorry,
Okay. So no, that's fine. I can edit that out. You can just pick up where he said, I brought 3,500, take it or leave it.
You just tell me when to go.
Yeah, go. Just say, well, pick up where he said, I brought 3,500, take it or leave it.
So yeah, he tells me brought 3,500, take it or leave it, and man, I'm just like, dude, I need the money. I need the money bad, and man, he wouldn't let me off the hook, dude. He nickel and dime me, and man, I had to have the money. I sold that trailer begrudgingly to that dude, and I did tell him, and I had a lot of like, man, with what I had gone through in my life, like that trailer
Mm-hmm.
was that saved my life, helped save my life, right?
Yeah.
And I told him like, man, if you ever sell this thing, please, please, please offer it to me first.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I named it the Redheaded Stranger. Man, I love that pit, dude. And
Yeah.
man, a couple years later, or a year later, I saw that he got another pit online because he sold barbecue in town here for a while, and he cooks somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else now. And man, he didn't ever call me to tell me he sold it, and I tried to track
Oh,
it down, and I
no.
couldn't find it. So if anybody ever sees that, yeah, dude, if anybody ever sees that trailer, I will buy it, and I will
Yeah.
pay more than $3,500 for it.
Good for
And
you.
it's
You got
something
to
I
post those
like that.
pictures. You got to post those
It's a red
pictures everywhere.
trailer. I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
before we
yeah,
before
I
we
would love
let you
it.
go, yeah, the
But
Redheaded Stranger.
go.
Yeah, but
Yes.
before we go, we had Cal and Hannah McNair from the Houston Texans last week, and one of the things that he talked about was after the Texans, if the Texans have a bad day, they lose or whatever, he'll go straight home and start the fire on his pit. He's big time. I don't know if you've crossed paths with him very much. He's a big time. Oh well. All right. So
Sorry.
while that's okay, like I said, it's not a problem for me, so don't worry about it. So we'll wrap it up with this. So I was saying, Cal McNair, we had him on a couple of weeks ago, last week, and he said if the Texans have a bad day, sometimes or they lose or whatever, the first thing he does when he gets home is he starts a fire, and it's like his little happy place. He's a big time, cook, loves to barbecue, and he says it just kind of brings him down, kind of centers him, and all that. And you've referenced, your struggles with addiction in the past, and it's very very enlightening that the story that you shared. I remember the first time I saw it was on Twitter. Did I'm not trying to get hokey here, but did barbecue kind of save your life?
Yeah, yeah, man, for sure. It's like one of those deals where idle hands, the devil's
Yeah,
playground, right? And
yeah.
barbecue takes a lot of time, and it was something that I love to do. And when I was in my addiction, I did it.
Hmm.
But it was something that I could hold on to and concentrate on and kind of pour my time into and thoughts. And um, I don't make that parallel for people too often. I'll kind of let them make it for themselves. But you know, uh, but absolutely, it was an outlet for me. And
Hmm.
it was a time where I could meditate and just sit there and think about, and like sometimes, yeah, I'm a person, I'm always going,
Hmm.
I'm just a nonstop. I'm Whether it's work or play, like, man, I don't quit. If I have free time in my schedule, I'm filling it. And
You and me both, brother.
it's the time. It's the time that I can just be still. And that's like hunting and fishing for me too. I'm a huge hunter and fisherman, and that's the same principle. Like that's time where I can take to myself and just be still.
Yeah.
And that I can't squeeze anything into that time because I'm either sitting in a blind or I'm standing in the middle of the bay. Like it's just time to make my brain quiet, and just be peaceful. And barbecue is the same thing for me.
Well, dude, man, you've got an incredible thing going, and I'm with you on the fishing. I don't know if you know, I have that Bite Me fishing podcast, and I fish every week. I was fishing when we were texting or emailing earlier, and so I can relate to that. What an incredible story. It's fantastic having you here. But before I let you go, I always want to kind of open the door. If there's anything you want to mention, anything special you got coming up, whether it's charitable with your business or anything else going on, share it with our listeners.
Man, I would love to. So 2 years ago, I got involved with Hogs for a Cause in New Orleans, and it is the largest pediatric brain cancer charity in the country. And they don't raise money for research. They raise money to give grants directly to families who are affected by pediatric brain cancer. And they are in the process of building houses similar to Ronald McDonald where families can come stay where their child receives treatment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, somebody in the Pinkerton barbecue family has had a child that pediatric brain cancer, and so last year when we were at Hogs for a Cause, man, it really hit me that we needed to start our own team from Texas and start raising money here in this state to give grant money back to people in the state of Texas. Texas is one of the largest grant recipients in the country from this charity, and they have the smallest fundraising base.
Yeah.
And so I took it as a personal mission of myself that I wanted to change that. So I am raising money for that charity through a Rally Bound page, and it's a competitive fundraiser, and it kind of culminates in April with a barbecue and music festival and competition in New Orleans. It's an amazing event, man. If you have time in the first weekend of April, usually the weekend before the Masters, dude, A+, amazing event to attend.
Yeah.
But we're we're doing different things. We're obviously just taking, but we have a whole hog and tell-all brisket barbecue class that we're doing on October 5th. $500 donation gets you a spot at that cooking class, and I actually am bringing the guy who is two-time hog team of the year in Memphis Barbecue Network, which is the premier. It's the only sanctioning body that does hog cooks. This guy is a friggin' hog cooking witch, and he's a close friend of mine. And I think people are going to have their ears blown off when they try some of this stuff, and their barbecue mind will be turned inside out. But beyond that, it's a great cause. And, if you can't donate, but you think somebody that can, man, I'd love to take him out to lunch and sit down and talk about the amazing things that Hogs for a Cause does for these people through barbecue. You know what I'm saying? And it's just really a unique and special thing. And I've seen the kids' families firsthand that this charity has touched. Man, it just moved my heart. So, you can find that link. I'm posting a lot of stuff about it on our social media.
That's what I was going to ask you. Where can we find the information?
Exactly. So you can go to my social media, and there'll be a link to go to the Rally Bound page on Pinkerton's, and I believe on my personal page and our Come and Eat It page. There's numerous posts that you can go into, like the reels. There's information on the hog class there, and obviously I'm a DM away. So if anybody out there is serious about getting involved in any way, shape, or form, my DMs are always open. Man, please just shoot me a message and I will get back to you. And like I said, even if I don't know you, man, I'll take you out to lunch. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it. I wonder what we're going to have. All right, man. Really, really, really appreciate it. It's been fantastic. Coming up next is our weekly visit this week with Corey Martin over at Texas Star Grill Shop with the Smoking Hot Tip of the Week. Thanks again, Grant. It's been fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.